I was never supposed to be the guy who got involved with a roommate, especially not him. But things don't always go the way you plan. I met Adam through one of those roommate matching apps. He was looking to fill the second room in his apartment, and I was desperate to get out of my last place. My old landlord was a nightmare, and the upstairs neighbors had a toddler with the energy of 3 Red Bulls a day. Adam's listing said, "Clean, chill, works late, likes dogs more than people." I liked that. Felt like someone who wouldn't be up at 2 a.m. hosting drum circle therapy sessions. We met at a coffee shop. He was already there when I arrived. Tall, broad-shouldered, in a fitted tee that looked too effortless to be accidental. He had short, dark hair, a bit messy, a strong jaw, and these blue eyes that made me blink a second too long. But it wasn't even his looks that stuck with me. It was the way he watched people, quiet, thoughtful, like he noticed things most people didn't. I didn't think of him that way at first. I noticed he was hot. I'm not blind, but I wasn't looking for anything. Not after the last breakup. We talked over iced coffees. He asked about my work, told me about he was a line cook at a popular gastropub downtown, usually worked nights, got home late, and liked to unwind with video games or bad sci-fi movies. Sounded ideal to me. The place was clean, the rent was doable, and he didn't give off any weird vibes. So I moved in 2 weeks later. The first month was quiet. Friendly. We were more like ships passing in the night. He worked late. I worked from home doing freelance design. We'd occasionally catch each other in the kitchen, half asleep in the mornings or winding down late at night with snacks and a rerun of The Office. He was a good roommate. Never left dishes in the sink, always kept common areas clean, didn't make too much noise. He also looked unfairly good coming out of the shower. Towel around his waist, wet hair, sleepy eyes. Not that I stared. Much. One night, maybe 6 weeks in, I was up late working on a client project. My desk is in the corner of the living room, and I had headphones on, zoned in. I didn't hear Adam come in. He tapped me lightly on the shoulder, and I flinched so hard I almost spilled my coffee. "Shit, sorry," he said, laughing. "Didn't mean to scare you." I pulled off my headphones, heart pounding. "Dude, I thought I was getting murdered." "Just your friendly local chef," he said, tossing his keys into the bowl by the door. He looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes, and he smelled faintly of grill, smoke, and cologne. Somehow, that combination worked. "You want a drink?" he asked. It was 1:30 a.m. I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, sure." He poured us each a whiskey, cheap, warm, but it hit the spot. We ended up sitting on the couch, sipping in silence for a bit. He didn't say much, just let the music from my computer fill the air. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "You ever feel like you're just passing time?" I glanced over. "What do you mean?" He stared at his glass. "Like you're going through the motions. Work, eat, sleep, repeat. But it's not going anywhere." I nodded slowly. "More often than I'd like to admit," he sighed. Yeah, we didn't talk much after that, but it stuck with me. How he said it like it was something heavy he'd been carrying around and just needed to say out loud. From that night on, something shifted. He started talking more, sitting next to me when I was on the couch instead of across the room, asking about my work, offering bites of whatever late-night meal he was experimenting with. We were becoming friends, and that was great. Until the night, it wasn't just that anymore. It happened on a Thursday night. I was coming back from a late run, something I'd picked up to deal with stress. I walked into the apartment sweaty and out of breath, headphones still in, hoodie clinging to me from the cold outside. Adam was in the kitchen, shirtless, wearing just joggers and cooking something that smelled like garlic and butter. He glanced up as I closed the door. "Hey," he said, giving me a once-over. "You run in this weather?" "Needed to clear my head," I replied, catching my breath. "What are you making? Pasta? Want some?" "Always." I headed to the bathroom to shower, heart still racing, but this time not just from the run. When I came back out, hair wet, hoodie swapped for a t-shirt, he'd already plated 2 bowls and was sitting on the couch. He handed me mine without a word. We ate in silence for a while, The only sound the quiet hum of the TV. About halfway through, he paused the show and turned to me. "You okay?" he asked. "You seemed off when you came in." I hesitated, then shrugged. "Just life stuff. Nothing serious." He didn't press, just nodded and went back to his food. That was Adam. Never pushed, but always present. Later, we were both sprawled out on the couch. The empty bowls were on the coffee table. The movie was long over, but neither of us had moved. My legs were up. His arm was behind his head, shirt still off, abs casually on display, like it was no big deal. And then he said something that cracked the air between us. "You ever think about sleeping with a guy?" I froze. It wasn't a flirty tone, more curious, casual, but the question landed like a hammer. I glanced over. He was still staring at the ceiling, like he hadn't just tossed a grenade into the room. "What do you mean?" I asked carefully. He shrugged. "I don't know. Just wondering. I've never done it, but sometimes I think about it." I didn't know what to say. My heart was doing this weird thumping thing, like it was trying to make a decision for me. "I have," I admitted. "I mean, I've got relations with guys." That got his attention. He turned to look at me, eyes a little wide. "Yeah?" I nodded. "Yeah?" There was a pause. Then he asked, "What's it like?" I laughed nervously. That's a big question. "I'm serious." I looked at him. Really looked, and I could tell he wasn't joking. He was searching for something. Maybe understanding. Maybe permission. "It's like with anyone," I said. "Sometimes good, sometimes awkward. Depends on who you're with." He nodded slowly. "Would you ever, with a friend?" I stared at him. "Is that you asking?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, quietly, "Maybe." There was a long silence after that. We didn't touch, we didn't move, but I could feel the air changing. He sat up slowly, resting his arms on his knees. His back was tense, like he'd just said something he couldn't take back. "You're not weirded out?" he asked. "No," I said. "Are you?" He shook his head. I don't know. I think I'm curious. But I also don't want to screw things up." I shifted closer. Not a lot. Just enough to make the space between us smaller. "You haven't?" I said. He looked at me, and for the first time since we met, there was something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Vulnerability. "I've never said that out loud before," he said. "To anyone." "Well," I said softly, "I'm glad you said it to me." He smiled, just barely. "Me too." We didn't kiss. Not that night, but when he went to bed, he paused at his bedroom door. "You still up?" he asked. I nodded. He hesitated, then said, "Come watch something with me." I followed him into his room. We didn't talk. Just lay there, side by side, the laptop screen glowing in the dark. At some point, my arm brushed his. He didn't move away, and when I got up to leave, he touched my wrist lightly. "You can stay," he said. So I did. That night, nothing happened. We didn't kiss. We didn't touch. Not really. But it was something. Lying next to Adam, I could feel the tension crackling between us. Not in a bad way, just in that weird electric way where everything feels sharper, more alive. Every breath he took felt like it echoed in the small space between us. I didn't fall asleep right away. Neither did he. At one point, he turned toward me. I felt the mattress shift, and then his voice, low, hesitant. "You still awake?" "Yeah." He was quiet for a beat. Then, "Is this weird?" "A little," I admitted, but not in a bad way. "Yeah," he said. "Same." Another pause. "I keep thinking about what I said earlier," he went on, "about intimacy. I don't want you to think I'm messing with you or something. I've never been able to say that stuff out loud." "You weren't messing," I said. "You were being honest. That's rare." He exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding something in. I don't even know what I'm trying to figure out. You don't have to know right now. He stopped, then tried again. I trust you, that's what I mean. That hit harder than I expected. Thanks, I said. That means more than you know. We didn't say anything else after that. Eventually, he rolled onto his back, and I mirrored him. Our arms brushed again, and this time, I let mine stay there, just barely touching. The next morning, we didn't talk about it. I woke up first, stretched quietly, and slipped out of his room. By the time he came out, hair messy, rubbing his eyes like a kid, I had already made coffee. He grabbed a mug and sat across from me at the counter. Thanks, he said, sipping. Then, after a pause, sleep okay? Yeah. You? He nodded. Better than usual. We left it at that. But things weren't the same after that night. He started coming home earlier, sitting closer, watching me more openly when we talked. One night, I caught him just looking at me, not in a creepy way, just studying my face like he was trying to understand something. Do I have something on my face? I joked. He shook his head, smiled a little. Nah, just thinking. About a week later, we were both on the couch again. It had become our thing. Late night movies, half watched. He'd made popcorn. I was halfway through some dumb action flick when I realized I couldn't focus, because he kept shifting closer. First, it was our legs touching, then our arms. Then, his hand was on mine, not holding it, just resting there, his fingers draped lightly over mine. I didn't move, neither did he. My heart was thudding in that way it always did when something big was about to happen. I didn't want to break the moment, but I had to say something. Adam, I said quietly. He looked over. Yeah? What are we doing? He swallowed. I don't know, I wanted to know what it felt like. Touching my hand? Yeah, he said, being close like this. I've never done this with a guy. I didn't think I'd want to. But with you? He trailed off, eyes flicking to my lips for half a second before looking away again. I shifted toward him. It's okay to want that. He was still for a moment. Then he said, Can I kiss you? That question hit me square in the chest. I nodded. Yeah, you can. He leaned in slowly, like he was afraid I'd vanish if he moved too fast. And then he kissed me. It wasn't rushed. Wasn't unsure. It was careful, curious. Like he wanted to memorize every part of it. His lips were warm, soft, hesitant at first, then deeper, fuller, more certain. My hand moved to his neck, fingers brushing the back of his hair. He let out this quiet breath against my mouth, and something in me melted. We pulled back just slightly, foreheads touching. Was that okay? He asked. Yeah, I whispered. That was more than okay. He smiled, nervous, excited, a little overwhelmed. Then he kissed me again. Longer this time. Slower, like he'd been waiting for it longer than he even realized. After that night, everything shifted. Not all at once. There wasn't some big conversation where we decided we were suddenly something. But there was a quiet understanding between us now, like we'd opened a door and neither of us was in a rush to close it. We didn't talk about the kiss the next morning, but we didn't avoid it either. He made coffee like usual. I handed him his mug and he smiled at me with this small, private look. Not smug, not awkward. Just like he knew something had changed and he was okay with it. That was the thing about Adam. He never rushed anything. Never forced it. He moved at the speed of trust. And somehow, that made me feel safer than anything else had in a long time. The next few days were full of these small, quiet moments that meant everything. Like the way he started standing a little closer when we cooked together in the kitchen. Or how he'd brush his hand against mine when we were watching TV. The first time he put his head on my shoulder while we were lying on the couch, I stopped breathing for a full 3 seconds. You good? He mumbled without lifting his head. Yeah, I said, just not used to this. To what? Being wanted. That made him shift. He looked up at me, serious all of a sudden. I don't know what I'm doing, he said, but I know I want this. You. That was the first time he'd said something like that. I didn't know what to do with it, so I just nodded and ran my fingers through his hair until his eyes drifted shut. Eventually, we started sleeping in the same bed. At first, it was just when he'd fall asleep on the couch, and I'd nudge him toward my room instead of his. Then it turned into him showing up in my doorway late at night, mumbling, "Can't sleep," like that was enough of a reason to crawl in beside me. And it was. We didn't always touch. Sometimes we'd fall asleep on opposite sides, the distance between us quiet and respectful. Other times I'd wake up with his arm across my chest, his breath warm against my neck, and I'd feel this deep, calm thing settle in my chest. He made me feel seen, not just wanted, safe, but I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. One night, after we'd both been pretending to watch a movie we'd seen before, I paused it and turned to him. "Are we pretending this isn't happening?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "No, I'm just trying to be careful." "Of what?" He shrugged. "I don't want to hurt you. Or ruin this. Or, I don't know. Realize I'm not who I thought I was." That last part hit different. "You mean not straight?" He nodded. "Yeah. Do you think that's what this is?" "I don't know," he said, voice low. "I just know that with you it doesn't feel wrong." We sat in silence for a while. Then I asked, "Do you feel confused?" He shook his head. "No, that's the weird part. It feels easy. Being with you feels easier than I thought it would." I let that sit for a second before I reached out and took his hand. "Then let's just keep doing what feels easy," I said, "and see where it goes." He looked at me, really looked, and then leaned in and kissed me again. Slower this time, deeper, his hand on my jaw, mine tangled in his shirt. It wasn't about lust. It wasn't even about figuring anything out. It was about being seen, held, wanted. We didn't rush into anything physical beyond that. Even when things got heavier, kissing until we were both breathless, hands wandering, breath catching, he'd always pull back first. Not because he didn't want to go further, but because he respected what we were building. "You okay?" He'd whisper, forehead pressed to mine. "Yeah." I'd breathe. "You?" He'd nod. "Just don't want to mess this up." You couldn't tell people we were dating. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He wasn't ready for that. And I didn't want to push him. But when we were in our apartment, when it was just us, it felt like the most honest thing in the world. One night, I caught him staring at me from the kitchen as I worked on my laptop. "What?" I asked, smiling. He shook his head, leaning on the counter. "Nothing. Just thinking." "About what?" He looked down, then back at me. "That I like you more than I expected to." For a while, it felt like we were in our own little world. The apartment had this weird, quiet rhythm to it. Our shared routines turning into something intimate. Grocery runs that used to be quick and silent became small adventures. Late-night dishwashing turned into slow dances to whatever music was playing. He started wearing my hoodies around the place, and I didn't say anything, even when I noticed his own pile of clean laundry stayed folded in his room. We were somewhere between roommates, friends, and something more. He still hadn't said he was gay, or bi, or anything really. But I stopped waiting for him to label it. Instead, I started watching the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. How he'd reach for my hand while we watched TV. How his thumb would brush the back of my neck when he walked past. The kind of stuff you don't do unless it means something. One Sunday morning, I made pancakes. It was something I did when I was anxious. Cook. Pouring batter felt safer than wondering what we were. Safer than asking where this was going. He came into the kitchen shirtless, hair still a mess from sleep, rubbing his eyes. "Damn," he said, grinning. "Domestic." I rolled my eyes. "Don't get used to it." He came up behind me, arms slipping around my waist. I froze. Not because I didn't want it, but because we'd never done this before. Not in the morning, not in daylight. His face brushed my neck. "I like waking up like this." "Like what?" I asked. Smelling pancakes. Finding you in the kitchen. Feeling like... He trailed off. Like I'm home. That word hit me square in the chest. I turned around, arms still around each other, and looked up at him. Adam. But before I could finish, there was a knock on the door. We both jumped. He stepped back fast, like a switch flipped, like someone had pulled a curtain. I walked to the door, heart racing for no good reason, and opened it to find my sister standing there with her arms crossed. "Wow," she said. "Took you long enough." "Sorry," I said quickly, stepping out into the hallway and shutting the door behind me without thinking. "Was just making breakfast." She raised an eyebrow. "For two?" I tried not to react. "You want coffee or not?" We headed to a cafe down the street. I kept checking my phone like I was waiting for something. But Adam didn't text. I got back an hour later and found the apartment quiet. The pancakes were gone. So was he. There was a note on the counter, written in his messy, fast handwriting. "Went out for a bit, needed air. You're good at pancakes." Eh. No smiley face. No, see you later. Just that. The rest of the day felt off. He came back late, didn't say much. Said he was tired. Went straight to his room. For 3 days, he kept his distance. We still shared the same space. Still made small talk. But the weight was back. The quiet tension. Like we'd crossed some line and he was trying to walk it back. I started second-guessing everything. Was I pushing too hard? Had I misread what this was? On the 4th night, I finally knocked on his door. "Yeah," he said through the wall. I opened it. He was sitting on the bed, back against the wall, reading something on his phone. He looked up, eyes tired. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded, then shook his head. "Can I come in?" He moved over and patted the space beside him. I sat down, the mattress dipping slightly between us. "I don't want to screw this up," he said, after a long silence. "You haven't." He looked at me, eyes searching. The other morning when we were in the kitchen, it felt like, too real?" I asked gently. He nodded. "I'm not trying to rush you," I said. "I just want to know if you still want this." He didn't answer at first, just stared at the blanket, twisting it in his hands. Then, "Yeah, I do. I just don't know what I'm doing, or who I am in all this." "You're Adam," I said. "You're figuring it out, and I'm not going anywhere." He let out a breath and leaned his head back against the wall. I wish I wasn't so scared. I reached for his hand, laced our fingers slowly. "You're not alone." After that night, things didn't go back to normal. They got better, not perfect. He was still figuring things out, still had moments where I'd catch him staring at nothing like his brain was spinning in a dozen directions. But he was there, present, trying. That mattered. He started staying in my room more often. At first, it was just sleep. His back to mine, bodies close but not touching. But over time, the space between us got smaller. One night, he rolled over, pulled me close, and whispered into the back of my neck, "I like waking up next to you." I didn't say anything, just squeezed his arm tighter around me. There were still no labels. We didn't call it dating, didn't tell anyone. But there was no pretending anymore. Not when he'd kiss me on the cheek while I was brushing my teeth. Not when he'd come home from work and toss his keys down with a, "Hey babe," like it slipped out naturally. Not when he started leaving little things behind in my room. Socks, his favorite hoodie, a half-finished book on my nightstand. But the biggest shift came the night we went out. It wasn't a date. Not officially, just drinks at a low-key bar nearby with some of my friends. He was nervous. I could see it in the way he kept adjusting his sleeves, checking his phone like someone might text him a way out. "You don't have to come," I told him. "I want to," he said. I don't know how to act around other people." Act like you're my roommate, I said with a smirk. He shot me a look. I don't kiss my roommate. You could start, I joked. He didn't laugh. But when we got to the bar, he stayed close to me. Not clingy, just there, like he didn't want to drift too far. My friends liked him. Of course they did. He was funny when he relaxed, had this dry, deadpan humor that came out of nowhere. He talked about his job, asked questions, nodded along, even when he didn't know what the hell we were talking about. And then, after his second beer, he did something that caught me completely off guard. He reached over under the table and rested his hand on my thigh. Not in a sexual way. Not even possessive. Just connection. I looked over at him, eyebrows raised. He didn't meet my eyes. Just sipped his drink, like it was no big deal. But his fingers stayed there, tapping slowly. I wanted to ask him what that meant. Wanted to freeze time and make sure he meant it. But I didn't. I just let him be. When we got home that night, we barely made it to the bedroom before he kissed me. It was different this time. Deeper. More certain. His hands moved like he'd stopped holding back, like he wasn't second-guessing every moment. He pulled off my hoodie, kissed down my neck and whispered, "I've been wanting to do this all night." I swallowed hard. Then do it. We didn't rush. We never did. He touched me like I mattered. Like he was learning everything 1 second at a time. My skin felt electric under his hands. Every breath we shared felt louder in the dark. Afterward, we lay there in silence, his head on my chest, my fingers tracing slow lines down his back. He broke the quiet first. "That was good." I laughed. "That's your review?" He propped himself up, looked at me, and said, "It felt like the first time I wasn't pretending." That hit deep. I kissed his forehead. "You weren't." He rested his head back down. "Is this okay? Us, I mean." "Yeah," I said. "This is more than okay." We fell asleep like that, twisted together, no space between us. And for once, I wasn't wondering what tomorrow would bring. I just wanted more of this. A few weeks later, we were brushing our teeth together, something so mundane, so ordinary. And he looked at me through the mirror and said, "I told my sister." I paused mid-rinse. "Told her what?" He spit, wiped his mouth, and leaned on the sink. "About you, about us." I turned to face him, toothbrush still in hand. "Seriously?" He nodded, almost shy. "She asked if I was seeing anyone." I said I was. And when she asked what she was like, I told her it wasn't a she. My chest tightened in that way it does, right before something huge happens. "What did she say?" He smiled. "Said it took me long enough." I laughed, unsure if it was from relief or nerves. He looked at me, really looked. I'm not hiding anymore. Not from myself, not from anyone. I stepped closer, heart in my throat. "You mean that?" He nodded. "I don't know what comes next, but I know I want it with you." And that was it. No grand gestures, no social media posts. Just two guys standing barefoot in a bathroom, toothpaste on their shirts, realizing they'd found something real in each other. Something they didn't need to name to know it mattered. Something that felt like home.